A humble woman at night stealthily opens the dumpster behind a mansion. The smell is unpleasant, but she smiles as she finds a piece of bread and leftovers of lasagna. Just as she is about to leave, the master's voice echoes behind her. What are you doing here? The story begins in a luxurious mansion in the Area Preta neighborhood, overlooking the Sea of Natal, Rio Grande do Norte. The homeowner, Eduardo, is a reserved millionaire, accustomed to the coldness of the business world. His routine is rigorous, and he barely notices the employees who keep his house spotless. Among them is Donna Marlene, a humble maid nearing 60, always quiet and dedicated to her work. Eduardo rarely pays attention to her. During the day, Marlene quietly cleans, while Eduardo speaks on the phone in his office. Eduardo, impatient tone. This wasn't part of the deal. If you don't deliver those results by Friday, we're done. He hangs up abruptly and sighs. He walks past Marlene in the hallway without even looking at her. Eduardo coldly in passing. Finish the living room before dinner. Marlene lowering her eyes in a low voice. Yes, sir. Marlene continues her work with a tired expression. She wears worn clothes but never complains. At the end of her shift, before leaving, she always checks the kitchen, not to take leftovers, but to see if any food has been thrown away. Night falls. The mansion's cook, Rosanna, is putting away dinner leftovers. Rosanna, nonchalantly. These rich folks throw away food like it's nothing, throwing lasagna into a clean bin. Poor people are the ones who know its value, right? Marlene watches from a distance, sadness and restrained hunger on her face. When no one is looking, she cautiously approaches the trash, opens it, and takes out a piece of bread and the discarded lasagna. Suddenly, Eduardo's voice thunders. What are you doing? Marlene freezes in fear, holding the piece of lasagna with trembling hands. Eduardo stares at Marlene with a cold, inquisitive look, the dim kitchen light highlighting the contrast between their expressions. Marlene, ashamed and with tears in her eyes, lowers her head and tries to speak. Eduardo, sternly filled with disapproval. Are you digging through my trash? Since when have you been doing this? Marlene tries to respond, but shame stifles her words. She takes a deep breath, her voice weak. Marlene, sadly, almost whispering, I'm sorry, sir, I just didn't want to waste it. Eduardo looks at her incredulously. He always saw her as a model employee and never imagined she could act this way. The silence becomes uncomfortable. Eduardo, more irritated now but controlling his voice. You're telling me you'd rather eat from the trash than ask? Why? Marlene, unsure how to explain, starts to cry quietly, still holding the food with trembling hands. Marlene, voice broken, struggling to speak. It's not for me, sir. It's for my grandson. He's sick and I have nothing at home to feed him. Eduardo pauses for a moment, surprised. The rigidity in his face falters briefly, but he quickly regains his cold demeanor. Eduardo, suspiciously trying to stay calm. What do you mean, Marlene? You've worked here for months. If you needed anything, why didn't you ask? Marlene, wiping her face, embarrassed. I didn't want to be a bother, sir. And the salary, it's not enough for everything. Medicine, rent, and what's left barely covers food. Eduardo feels a growing heaviness in his chest, but still doesn't know how to respond. He has always lived in a bubble of comfort and luxury, detached from the personal struggles of his employees. Eduardo, a bit softer but still rigid. Why didn't you talk to Rosanna? She could have helped. Marlene shaking her head resigned. The shame is stronger, sir. We learn not to ask for anything more than necessary, and sometimes even the necessary isn't enough. Visibly uncomfortable, Eduardo crosses his arms. Marlene's words begin to affect him, but his rational mind tries to justify the situation. He's about to dismiss her when something in his heart stops him. Eduardo, trying to mask his inner conflict. Go home, Marlene. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Marlene quickly wipes her face and makes a timid bow before leaving, clutching the food like a treasure. Eduardo sits in his office chair, his mind restless. He opens an expensive bottle of wine, but the drink tastes bitter. The image of Marlene, ashamed, and the mention of her sick grandson linger in his mind. As he tries to work, a persistent thought invades his conscience. How did I never notice? The next day, Eduardo arrives at the mansion earlier than usual, determined to understand the situation better. Instead of heading straight to his office, he discreetly calls Rosanna to ask about Marlene. Eduardo, calm but curious. Have you noticed anything strange about Marlene? Has she mentioned any problems? Rosanna, surprised but cautious. She's very reserved, sir. I know she has a sick grandson, but she doesn't talk much about it. Occasionally, though, I see her leave early, looking worried, like she's in a hurry to get home. Eduardo listens thoughtfully. He realizes he needs to dig deeper to grasp the full extent of the issue. At the end of the day, Eduardo watches Marlene leave quietly through the back of the mansion. Curious and concerned, he decides to follow her in his car, keeping a safe distance. Marlene walks through modest streets, crossing a humble neighborhood in Natal. She enters a small, worn-out house with a sandy yard. Eduardo parks across the street and observes. Eduardo peers through a slightly open window, unnoticed. He sees Marlene placing the food on a table and approaching a makeshift bed where a frail boy, around 8 years old, lies. It's her grandson, Caio. Marlene, with tenderness and sadness, here you go, my love. I brought some lasagna for you. It's not much, but you'll like it. Caio gives a faint smile, visibly weak. Marlene strokes his hair and gently feeds him the small piece. The scene is silent, but laden with love and pain. Eduardo, whispering to himself, stunned. My God. Suddenly, a young woman enters the house, Amanda, Caio's mother. She looks exhausted and worn out, as if life has drained all her strength. Amanda, half-heartedly, were we able to get any medicine today, Mom? The clinic was closed again. Marlene, trying not to show weakness. No, sweetheart, but we'll figure something out, okay? God doesn't abandon anyone. From outside, Eduardo is overwhelmed by emotions. For the first time, he witnesses a reality he never imagined. The coldness he felt the previous night melts under the weight of what he has seen. Eduardo returns home deeply moved. Witnessing Marlene and her family in such a vulnerable state awakens a new sense of awareness about his own life and privileges. That same night, he decides he cannot remain indifferent. Eduardo is on the phone with a well-connected friend in the healthcare field. Eduardo, speaking firmly but empathetically. I need your help, Roberto. There's a boy who needs urgent care, and the health clinics aren't helping. Can you speed things up? On the other end, Roberto agrees to personally handle the situation. Eduardo feels a momentary relief, knowing this is just the beginning. The next morning, Marlene arrives at the mansion, still timid after the incident in the kitchen. Eduardo calls her in for a private conversation. She walks into his office, fearing she will be fired. Eduardo, with a kind yet direct gaze. Sit down, Marlene, I need to talk to you. Marlene, nervous, obeys, clutching her bag on her lap. Her eyes show a mix of fear and resignation. Marlene, almost whispering, I'm sorry about what happened, sir. I understand if you want to fire me. Eduardo slowly shakes his head, speaking in a softer tone than she expected. I'm not going to fire you, Marlene. In fact, I want to help you and your family. Marlene looks up, surprised and confused. She can't believe what she's hearing. Marlene, completely emotional. Help? How? Eduardo, serious but kind. I went to your house yesterday. I saw your grandson, and I know you've been carrying this burden alone for a long time. That's going to change. Marlene begins to cry with relief, unable to believe his words. Eduardo stands and gently places a hand on her shoulder in a sincere gesture of support. Eduardo with a small smile. I've already scheduled an appointment for him. A doctor will see him today, and more than that, I don't want you or your daughter to worry about food anymore. I'll make sure you get proper meals every month. Marlene sobs, trying to speak, but the words won't come out. Eduardo continues kindly. You'll never need to go through the trash again. Marlene covers her face with her hands, overwhelmed by emotion. For the first time in a long while, she feels a weight lifted from her shoulders. Eduardo, still speaking with empathy. You don't have to be ashamed, Marlene, and if you ever need anything, just ask. At the private hospital, Marlene, Amanda, and Eduardo anxiously wait as the doctor examines Caio. The room is silent, the tension palpable. Eduardo watches Marlene holding her grandson's hand, as if trying to give him all the strength left in her heart. The doctor returns to the room after the examination, his expression serious. Marlene holds her breath, and Eduardo leans forward, anxious. Doctor calmly. He's weak, but it's not too late. His condition is severe anemia and malnutrition. With treatment, supplements, and proper nutrition, he will recover. Marlene covers her mouth with her hands, breaking into a cry of relief and gratitude. Amanda embraces her son, whispering words of comfort. Marlene, speaking through tears, thank God. Eduardo, who has been silently observing, smiles genuinely for the first time. The burden in his chest dissolves, replaced by a sense of purpose he has never felt before. Amanda, looking at Eduardo, still in disbelief over the help they've received. Mr. Eduardo, I don't even know how to thank you for all of this. Eduardo, with humility and sincerity. But there's no need to thank me. From now on, your family won't have to go through this ever again. Outside the hospital, Eduardo pauses next to Marlene and Amanda before they head home. The night is cool, and he takes the moment to make an unexpected offer. Eduardo, with a slight smile. Marlene, I want you to keep working with me, but I also want to do more than just pay your salary. We'll make sure Caio gets the best treatment. And Amanda, if you're interested, I can find a job for you at the company. Amanda and Marlene exchange looks, surprised and emotional. They can't hold back their tears at Eduardo's unexpected kindness. Marlene, with a trembling voice, Mr. Eduardo, you've changed our lives. Eduardo bows his head for a moment, reflecting on how this experience has changed him too. Eduardo, speaking softly almost to himself. No, you changed mine. The three of them, Marlene, Amanda, and Eduardo, embrace warmly, a gesture full of emotion that symbolizes a new beginning for all of them. A few weeks pass. The atmosphere in Eduardo's home is completely different. The mansion, once marked by coldness and distance, has become a welcoming place. Marlene and Amanda are more confident, and Caio is slowly recovering, gaining weight and energy. Eduardo is in the garden, flying a kite with Caio, who now runs joyfully across the lawn. The boy holds the kite string with both hands, his face lit up by a genuine smile. Eduardo watches the scene with silent pride. Caio shouting with joy, "Look, Uncle Eduardo, it's flying high." Eduardo smiles, experiencing a happiness he has never felt before. Inside the house, Marlene and Amanda watch through the window, their faces glowing with emotion. Marlene with tears in her eyes, "I never thought I'd live to see something like this, daughter. Life surprises us when we least expect it." Amanda hugging her mother, "It was a miracle, Mom, and it's all thanks to him." As Caio runs through the garden, Eduardo reflects on the man he was before meeting Marlene and her family. His life of success and wealth now seems small compared to the impact he has had by helping this humble family. Eduardo thinking to himself, "The greatest wealth in life isn't money, it's being able to change someone's life." Eduardo helps Caio up after the boy trips, laughing with him. The expression on Eduardo's face is one of peace, as if he has finally found something that no amount of money could ever buy. Months later, Marlene's family life has completely changed. Amanda now works at Eduardo's company and has achieved financial stability. Caio is back in school, full of energy, living a normal life. Eduardo visits a simple but newly renovated house, a gift he arranged for Marlene and Amanda. The house has colorful walls and a small yard where Caio plays with other neighborhood children. Eduardo smiling, "How are things here, Donna Marlene?" Marlene with a sincere smile, "I couldn't ask for more, Mr. Eduardo. Every day feels like a dream." Eduardo walks through the house, watching life blossom within. In the yard, Marlene plants some vegetables, saying she enjoys feeling the earth come to life. Amanda, sitting with Caio, helps him with his homework. Eduardo pauses at the gate, watching the family together. He realizes that by helping Marlene, he has also freed himself from his own loneliness. Eduardo thinking to himself, "Sometimes, to find meaning in life, all it takes is to extend a hand to someone in need." Eduardo smiles as he says goodbye to Marlene and her family. He gets into his car, but his heart is now lighter. Sometimes, life presents us with unexpected situations that transform us deeply. Eduardo discovered that true wealth lies not only in material possessions, but in the impact we can have on others. By helping Marlene and her family, he found a greater purpose and a new beginning for himself. If this story touched your heart, remember to look around you. Small acts of kindness can change someone's destiny and maybe even yours. Did you enjoy the story? Share it with friends and family and comment below on how a good deed has made a difference in your life. We'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If you love inspiring and heartwarming stories, be sure to subscribe to the Kollobe Inspired Stories channel. Here, we share stories that warm the heart and show that we all have the power to make a difference. Thank you for watching this far. Your presence means the world to us. And remember, the world needs more kindness, and it can start with you. See you in the next video. Until then.